Sakaru Hokusoni, you son of a b****, you've done it again. Also, completely and utterly disregard my previous video because we're retconning it.
Sometimes you gotta close the door to open a window.
Kagurabachi Chapter 60, Resurrection. Hokusoni was once again dropped a miniature nuke upon us with this chapter, and while it isn't filled with action, it is certainly filled with a lot of setup and small little details that I want to go through here. But this chapter opens up with the Kamunabi discussing the events of Samura's betrayal, and one thing that I immediately took notice of was this guy right here. Samura, of all people, he's the last person we need going rogue on us. Now, Samura, over the past couple of chapters, has been talked up and walked up. This dude has talked the talk and walked the walk, and, well, I suppose other people have talked the talk for him. Regardless, but the Kamunabi they seemingly respect his capabilities, and it's also the same for Yora from the Hishaku here. He also respects his capabilities. But one thing I want to look further at here is that even though this is just Samura, we still have the wielder of the Shinuchi to deal with, who wields the scariest blade in the series. And the reason I say all this, because it doesn't sound really relevant, but it really puts into perspective just how terrifying these blades actually are in the hands of someone who knows how to use them. Because let's not forget here, Chihiro has only had N10 for around 3 years, so he's still very green behind the ears, green behind the gills, wet behind the ears. He's still very immature in how he wields it, and that was noted like earlier on in the series, and that was put on full display in the previous chapter, with Hokusoni basically showing us the difference in power between a novice and a veteran. Pretty much everyone else that we have seen wielding an enchanted blade in this series so far has just been a novice. Chihiro, Sojo, I don't even think you can count them, but Hirohiko, and then Kiora. They've all been novices with an enchanted blade, but now we have Samura, who is an absolute veteran of his craft, a master, if you will. But we get moving into our next bombshell here, and that is Hakuri. Hakuri has seemingly become immobile due to his sorcery here. Now, I want to point out the timestamp on this chapter as it opened up here. It's November 10th at 3:14 AM. That is just 2 days after the Rakuzachi. Just 2 days ago, both Hakuri and Chihiro were fighting for their lives against Kiora, who was possessed by the Shinuchi wielder. And only 2 days ago, Hakuri took a major beating from his brother, and shortly after awoke his sorcery, the storeroom sorcery here, and pushed himself even further beyond his limits to help Chihiro, to the point where they both collapsed from physical exhaustion, with Chihiro waking up in a hospital. It has been an extremely busy 2 days for the pair of them since all of that has transpired here. But this all culminates in Hakuri immobilized. He's well enough to hold a conversation, but according to Azumi, the neural pathways that govern sorcery are damaged, and he's undergoing intensive treatment, but there is no guarantee that he will ever recover, which honestly, that fucking sucks to hear out loud, like genuinely. As I mentioned before, it's only been 2 days since the Rakuzachi auction here, but that occurrence, we were given a flashback showing how Hakuri was shown the brutality of life and also the brutality of his own clan, his own family. And at that point, he saw the vow to never let another life slip through his fingers. And just 2 days later, he was unable to save either Chihiro or Uraha, thus letting 2 more lives slip through his fingers. Now granted, yeah sure, Chihiro is now all good and well, but at that point Hakuri didn't know that. And honestly, this whole thing, it just hurts to see play out. Like, seeing Hakuri try so hard with this newfound sorcery, and the only thing that he's gotten so far in return is just pain and suffering. So it seems that Hokusoni has chosen Hakuri to be his emotional and physical punching bag, literally. But something I did notice here was how the Kamunabi seemed to only value Hakuri for his ability to transport the swords, which somewhat parallels the Sazanami family constantly transporting people as objects who only cared for that object's quote-unquote value. But now it's Hakuri who's being valued sort of only as an object to transport these swords. So that's kind of interesting, but I also do want to respect Hokusoni's decision here to do this with Hakuri, because to have his overexertion of his powers backfire on him, because realistically, Hakuri, as stated by the Hishaku and the Kamunabi, is an extremely troublesome and valuable player to have on the team. For the Hishaku, he provides the problem of shifting the blades around willy-nilly, and for the Kamunabi, he provides the solution of shifting the blades around willy-nilly. So to see Hokusoni take him out of the story for a minute here is a very respectable choice. However, what I will say is this feels a little bit too familiar. The character whose power is integral to change the course of the narrative is now put in a situation of, oh, we don't know if he'll recover, we can't guarantee his recovery. It sounds a little bit too familiar. I'm looking at you, Nobara. And also, if you're into JJK and you want to see a video on that subject, check that video out. But anyways, we get a status report of the sealing of the Shinuchi here, which is about 3/5 complete, which is a really random number, not just like 2/4 complete, 3/5 complete. I feel like it's random that you hear that kind of stuff in storytelling, but hey, whatever. And this comes off the back of the Kamunabi sort of debating on whether it's not worthwhile bringing that blade into play and giving it a new owner here, but it is also revealed that Owl, the ability that we saw in the previous chapter here, isn't just in one spot here. It isn't just massively over one spot. It's actually, in fact, all over Japan, meaning Samura has multiple instances of this ability active currently, which lends into the statement that Yoro said in the previous chapter of Samura sort of being the man who controlled the war here. But not only this, it sort of gives us a slight hint as to what the opposition of that war actually looked like. And as it's mentioned, how with a vast reach here, it can probably only detect massive levels of spirit energy. Now, in a war, I imagine Samura will probably have had to employ the same sort of tactics here to cover the scope of the battlefield here, because typically wars, you know, they cover a massive area, which means the thing that the blades were created to fight here were wielding some truly massive levels of spirit energy, which should give you a bit of a clearer picture of this image here of the war that was given to us way earlier on in the series here. But none of these blasts look like anything that we have seen from the enchanted blades so far, so it makes you wonder just truly what kind of level of sorcery were they fighting when they were fighting? How bad were they getting their ass whooped that they needed to create the Oppenheimer of weapons in this world here with these nuclear swords? But speaking of teasers, we do also get another name drop for an enchanted blade bearer here who goes by the name of Subaru, and he also likes sushi, so there is that. Make of that what you will. But we also finally get round to the meat and potatoes of the chapter here with the revelation that Chihiro is actually indeed alive. And, you know, this is actually the third time in 60 chapters that Chihiro has woken up in the hospital bed, which isn't a lot, but it's kind of weird that it's happened 3 times, which is kind of funny. That works out like a hospital trip pretty much every 20 chapters. I kind of like this trend that's going on here, kind of like sort of serves that, like, you know, he's kind of like waking up in a hospital bed, and I feel like every time that happens, it kind of signals the end of an arc here. But anyways, we see Shihiro's piecing everything together and trying to make sense of it all. Uraha's death, Samura's betrayal. It's a lot for him to sort of take in, but there are some interesting things that I want to point out here, because Chihiro, he remembers the events of what happened as he nearly died, and that he was stabbed, despite quite clearly being slashed by Samura and actually being killed. Shihiro's memory of these events is very different from what actually happened. Well, not very different, but only so slightly different. And I thought that was interesting, considering Samura is supposedly the man who controlled the war, as far as Mr. John Hishaku is concerned here. And realistically, controlling a war is arguably all about who has sort of the best information and who can manipulate that information the best. If you watch any sort of documentary, it's always pieces of information that always change the tides of war here. And it makes me wonder if Samura's blade can sort of alter memories, which would sort of make him the perfect silent assassin within the war here, being able to take out people and injure them and alter their memories to obscure information from the enemy. Just a theory that I'm working on, possibly headcanon, but I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments down below. But Shiba does clarify that Chihiro was in fact dead. He did in fact die 2 hours after the slash, but actually several minutes after his gash on his lungs and his liver healed and the wound closed. And Shiba mentions how his body's almost totally restored and mentions how that was either an insane miracle but at this point, Chihiro cuts him off, mentioning how his eternal contract is broken, before coming to the realization that he did indeed, in fact, die. But here's where things get really, really interesting, because Shiba mentions how he thinks Samura might have deliberately planned Chihiro's revival, theorizing it's perhaps within Toby Mooney's power, but he can't really say for sure. But this raises a very, very good question that Chihiro himself actually asks a little bit later on here, and that question is, what about Uraha? What about everyone else that has been killed by, well, not so much, Chihiro doesn't ask this, that's kind of me asking this, but what about everyone else that has been killed by Samura so far? If he revived Chihiro, couldn't he just revive Uraha? Or may he have revived Uraha? And I mentioned before how earlier Hakuri's situation sort of reminded me a fair amount of Nobara's situation in Jujutsu Kaisen, but Hokuzono does this thing again, but with Uraha this time, providing us with a way of, he may not have died, but also telling us not to hold our breath, sort of. And I'm not too sure if I'm fond of this decision, but I am very intrigued to see just how Hokuzono manages to pull this off, because I will be honest with you, I didn't really like that decision from Gege about Nobara in Jujutsu Kaisen in sort of hindsight. I do wish it was handled a little bit differently, so I'm very intrigued to see how Hokuzono pulls this off and maybe changes the mold on this. But going back to Shiba and Chihiro's conversation here, Shiba further speculates that Samura did this to send a message to Shiba, to warn Shiba that he can't protect Chihiro and to sever Chihiro's eternal contract with Enten to stop his quest for vengeance. Now, I feel this is done with a third reason in mind, and this is pure headcanon, just pure speculation on my behalf, but I believe Samura did this to sort of indirectly protect Chihiro obviously is the main reason here, but also in hopes that Chihiro may stop his quest for vengeance and instead try to stop Samura from killing more people. I mean, one of the reasons I say this is how Samura treats killing. It's very clear that he does not want to do this. He doesn't want to kill people, but he is forcing himself to do so because he feels like he needs to do it. He feels like he's the one. He's got to be the righteous person to do this and atone for his sins, essentially. But not only this, Chihiro replies to Shiba, I guess you got the warning loud and clear. But it doesn't seem at all like that warning has sunk in with Chihiro. His curiosity is just further fueled. He just wants answers. And just as we're about to get what we want to hear, what Shiba did in the war, we're interrupted. We almost got more information on what it was that Shiba and Kunishiki done, but we were interrupted. And honestly, I really want to know what it was that those dudes did. I want to know what was so bad that resulted in a blade wielder being sealed away, and Samura wanting to kill the rest of the blade wield, blind himself. I want to know what it was that these guys were capable of here. But from here on out, we are treated to Chihiro doubling down on his resolve and telling Shiba that he cannot quit. He's taken people's lives, and his dad told him to see things with his own two eyes. And I think this chapter sort of really hammered home for me just how young Chihiro is. Now, I know some of you youngsters, Grandpa Weeb is speaking here, but I know some of you youngsters may be watching this thinking right now, oh, but he's 18, he's grown up. But he's not. 18 it's no age at all, especially when your life has been nothing but chasing a life of vengeance here, missing out on your formative teenage years in pursuit of the killers of your father here. It does things to the mental health that are just, it can't be undone, and it shines through in this chapter. Now, I don't say this lightly because he is my favorite character in anime and manga. He's top two with my two characters, Miyamoto Musashi and Gon Freaks, and I literally have Gon Freaks tattooed on my arm right here, but Chihiro reminds me a lot of Gon Freaks from Hunter x Hunter here, and you can see Chihiro tearing up while he's doubling down on his goals, and it really did remind me a lot of Gon facing the reality of Kite's death at the hands of Pito, and him doubling down before making a huge decision that had a lasting impact on his life. And I think that is sort of where Chihiro is at right now. He's at a point where he might make a decision that is rash, and it might have a major impact on his life. And we already saw how emotional he was just before Samura cut him down the first time. And even Shiba hammers home that these repercussions, if Samura cuts him down again and you die again, he will keep that N10. He will keep that blade. And then he asks Chihiro if he is prepared for that, to which Chihiro says with conviction, I won't die again. But this response, it sort of isn't an acknowledgement of Chihiro's preparedness for the situation ahead. It's just that he won't die. And that, to me, I think is a very, very interesting aspect of Chihiro's character. And I'm very excited to see Hokuzono sort of delve into this, because there's a lot of turmoil going on in Chihiro right now. Obviously, him coming face-to-face with Samura, it's sort of like coming face-to-face with everything that he thought he knew in the world is now being told that it's kind of wrong here. But this chapter starts to end off with what I assume is a small time skip of a couple of days, as this mini Samura here told Chihiro to rest for a couple of days, but he's now looking a lot more healthy, looking a lot completely healed here, which is unique. This feels like a turning point in the series, because honestly, since the beginning of the series, Chihiro has not been fresh. Like, pretty much since the beginning of the series, and since he got into any fights, he has just not been fresh. And we see him and Samura's former bodyguards here, who are a team of ninjas, preparing to move out to face off against Samura. And the plan here is that Samura's bodyguards are trained to make zero noise and conceal their scent. They were the only ones who could fight alongside Samura, who, again, as I may remind you, attacks sound and smell on the battlefield because he's just that guy, apparently. But now, they are being sent out to fight Samura. His greatest ally might now end up being his undoing. And as it seems, we come to a close on the Swordbearer Assassination arc here, showing Chihiro, who now stands tall, healthy, suited and booted and ready for action. And I've got to be honest with you, I absolutely fucking love this costume change. Chihiro looks sharp as a fucking tack. I mean, Hokuzono did tease us with that little new fresh fit on the Shonen Jump cover there, but I actually really fuck with the suit here. And what I really love is that Hokuzono just let us know that we are truly just only getting started in this series. This feels like the end of the epilogue, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if we were to watch season 1 of the anime here, it would just say Kagurabachi epilogue. You know what I'm saying? That's how it feels here, and I'm always here for it, and I'm very excited to see where this all goes. But anyways, that is it from me. If you haven't already and you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. But if you want to help me take these videos to an even higher level and help the production value, consider supporting the Patreon, as that truly helps keep the lights on and the channel afloat. But as always, I will catch you guys all in the fucking next one. Much fucking love. Big fucking kisses. Peace.